Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I got to thinking when Juneteenth came to being a national holiday and it happened so fast, we really didn't have any time to prepare for it. And so I started wondering, what is it that we should do to celebrate this holiday? And I set the question out to Twitter, and I got some good advice back from someone who said, just sit back and shut up and listen. And I thought, in one respect, he's absolutely right. This is a holiday for us white people to sit back and shut up and listen. But on the other hand, I don't totally think he understood the spirit of the question, which was, you know, we have Christmas traditions, we have Thanksgiving traditions, we have Halloween traditions, we have a new holiday now. We need some new traditions, and he's right that one of those traditions needs to be white people sit down, shut up, and listen. um, but I just thought I would invite in some guests to do some brainstorming on what should we do in the future years as to make traditions for Juneteenth. And I've asked Kitty to help me. Hello, Kitty.
Hi, how is everyone tonight?
And I asked Maya Atkinson
Hi.
and Cynthia McDonald. But Cynthia said she is working and she will be here. And when she gets here, she will jump in. But we need to give her a few minutes to get home from work and get ready. So in the meantime, let's get to brainstorming. Maya, do you have any ideas to start us off with?
Yeah, actually, so I'm not sure what area you're in. I'm not asking you to dox yourself or anything like that, but a lot of the bigger cities do have Juneteenth festivals, which are insane. So growing up in Illinois, I had never heard of Juneteenth, of course, like most Americans. But when I moved to Baltimore, they huge festival shuts down like a whole neighborhood in one area of the city, and it is, oh my gosh, food, dancing, like music, a lot of African American vendors selling whatever they do, whether it's art or again the food, jewelry, all types of things. It really is kind of a festival of life, and it was through that festival that I actually learned what Juneteenth was, because again, it's not in, I don't know, they don't feel the need to put it in any of the history books, North or South. I heard that in Austin, well, I saw Miss Juneteenth on the news, and I guess they do that in Austin, which is really interesting. Um, and then there've been, I guess, a number of other ways that cities across the town, across the country, celebrated as well. And I love having this discussion because it opens it up. A lot of Americans have, of every color, have no idea what Juneteenth is and why it's important. And if we're going to follow this trend of shutting down the conversation in schools, and yeah, I think it is important to have at least the traditions, so that we can keep getting the word out, so that we know what our history is, because apparently we're hell-bent on repeating it. Not necessarily slavery, but just bad trends of, in our past, from our past.
Like how the Republicans today decided to block, the Voting Rights Act that they were pressing forward, which,
Yeah.
marginalized people are the ones that are most impacted by GOP policies like that. And that is like one thing outside of Juneteenth, like just in general, we should be pushing for more voting rights, more representation, more everything to even the playing field. And we need to like have accountability for these textbooks in schools that don't talk about Rosewood, that don't talk about Black Wall Street, that don't talk about Juneteenth. Like literally the fact that it's not talked about is a national embarrassment, honestly.
It should be, and it's insane because, I mean, we all know why they're doing it, but, and it's not even, I agree with you about evening the playing field, but we both know that that's not what they're interested in doing.
Yeah.
We should be interested in a democracy. I mean, just being an American, you would think that if nothing else, voting rights are essential to a healthy democracy, which they're clearly not interested in either.
hmm I really like the Australian system where not only are people automatically registered to vote at 18, but voting is a requirement.
Hmm.
You have to go to the polls. Now, you don't have to actually cast a vote, but you have to at least go show up.
Right. I would love that.
And and it's a holiday, so you don't have any excuse of I have to work.
I mean, people are talking about a voting holiday. I really don't like it. There are too many people in society that can't have the day off. I don't think it's fair to expect I mean, I guess you could shut down all the restaurants. You can't shut down the fire department. You can't shut down the police. You can't shut down the ambulance workers, any of the hospital workers. I mean, there's just so many essential workers. You can't shut down the buses, obviously, on, voting day. We still have to have all those bus drivers that are, probably working longer hours because, it's a holiday. You're trying to get everybody in. I would assume that that would stop a lot of places from, I don't know. I'm thinking that there'd be buses running, transportation running 24/7. And for the poorer people, it's going to be the buses. So we really can't shut down transit workers. And there's just too many
Good point.
people. I like what my state does. I believe it's a week, and I've heard some places as much as 2 weeks. I like that better. Like within a 10-day period, you should have one day off that you can use to vote if it's important to you at all.
Also, I mean, not just, expanding, early voting or, like you're saying, in that 10 days leading up to election, but vote by mail as well. Have
Yes.
no requirement for vote by mail. That way, people with disabilities that might not be able to get to a voting precinct or can't afford to, can then, do, their right. You have a right. If you are a citizen in this country, you have a right to vote. Just like I honestly believe that felons should also have the right to vote. But I think that people in prison should have a right to vote too.
All of them.
I think that once you take
especially
away
in jail, like if you're in jail, you're just sitting waiting. Why don't we should have polls at the jails?
Absolutely. But I think if you are a United States citizen, you should be allowed to vote.
Yes.
Full stop. I don't care if you're a murderer or anything. It doesn't matter. You're still a U.S. citizen. And anyone who's well, I don't want them setting policies. If there's enough of them, if there's enough people in jail setting policy, maybe you want to reevaluate that system. Just a thought.
You're here.
I mean, that is the one thing that we are number one in is incarcerated citizens per capita. I believe people who believe in angels. But that's a whole other thing.
Probably.
But no, honestly, everybody should be able to vote. It should be easy. It should be hassle-free. Everybody from the time they come of age should be automatically registered.
Mm-hmm.
So no voter roll purges or anything. Tie it to your social security number. It's if you want to make sure that the person is a citizen, rather than voter ID laws or anything like that, every citizen has a social security number. You have to, or you can't do a lot of things in our society.
Mm-hmm.
So literally just be okay, here's my name, here's my social, and there you go. That's your verification that you're a citizen. You have a social security number. That's it. That's all you really need.
Yeah, no, when I went to vote, God, it was weird. They asked me for my address, and then they asked me for my initials, and they were able to pull me up with that. I didn't need an ID or anything like that. So I mean, I don't know. It worked, and I don't see people. I mean, I don't know. We all know that this is a ruse. There's never been, and I know that Bush did a really big thing because he just couldn't stand the fact that he didn't legitimately win, too. And the same thing came up in the early 2000s as has, this past year or past couple of months. There's nobody willing to put their freedom at risk to vote a second time.
Mhm.
And we have no instances of people voting multiple, and certainly not any instances of illegal immigrants or anything like that. Actually, most of them are Republican voters.
Yeah, there were a handful that either voted for their dead spouses or voted twice, and it was at Trump's insistence, and they voted for Trump.
And they
Like,
voted for Trump.
Mhm.
Yeah.
literally, I mean, it is such a minuscule, minute number of cases of actual voter fraud that they found in the last 80 years that it's negligible. It would not, even if you multiplied it by 1,000, it would not be enough to shift any election. And that's
Yeah.
being more than generous, saying times it by 1,000, still not enough to change any outcomes.
Yeah, Tom Hartman said that more people were struck by lightning last year than we found of voter fraud.
Another
Mhm.
issue, I think, is the problem we have in this country with minority rule and the fact that it tends to be the conservative Republicans. Every state gets 2 senators, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
if they have 10,000 people or,
Mm-hmm.
100 million people, like 2 senators. So that already disproportionately, weighs the scales on the side of the minority party, which is the GOP. They represent less people than the Democrats do. There are less Republicans in the country than there are Democrats, and less of both than there are independents. But overall, you have an issue, and same thing with the Electoral College. That was a
Mm-hmm.
compromise with slave states because they're like, well, we have bodies, but these black people here, they don't count for a whole person. So like we want some fudging of the numbers there. We need a bell curve so that we're equally represented. It was
Well,
gross
I mean,
then, and
yeah,
it's
it's
out
just
of date now.
more Southern power grab. The South has been doing this power grab since like the start of the seriously the start of the country. And when we were like, we have slavery in the Constitution. Why? Nobody could have seen that we wouldn't have slavery in the country forever. Why is it in the Constitution? It's just a Southern power grab, and it's just so ridiculous. Being Black and a woman, it is. I've always had to fight just to be equal. So to be better, thinking myself better than someone else or needing that, I mean, it's just never been a thing. And part of me is just like, I can't even understand it. And another part of me is just like, God, would you really want to? Like, your mind would just go crazy from the hatred, apparently. I would love for, what I'm hearing from the Black community is just like, man, this is great, but we were celebrating it anyway. If you really wanted to help us out, you could have done this voting HR1.
Mhm.
Like that would have been great. We would have happily have taken that as a win because again, it's just been ever. I mean, God, again, I keep wanting to put it back to a point in time, but you could put it back to Reagan, you could put it back to Nixon, you could put it back to who was Lincoln's VP? Was that Jackson? But yeah, okay, Lincoln's VP. Anyway, but you can also take it all the way back to the founding of the country. It all kinds of different ways that we've been disadvantaged so that white people can be more advantaged. I was having this an argument with this guy on Twitter about, you guys are saying you want equality, but you really just want like a handout. Like sometimes I think, I mean, not putting it on us like that, but saying sometimes equality looks like a handout. And my response was, Black people, when you know that a Black person lives in a home, the price of it is devalued. When you see a black sounding name on a resume, you're less willing to call it. When a Black person's name is affixed to a loan application, they're less likely to get it with the same income, same credit score, same amount of time of credit as a white person with the same thing, less likely to get into colleges, da 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 da. We're not asking for a handout. We're asking to be set on equal ground. And at what point is not oppressing us, not asking for a handout? We're asking for equality, period. And it would be really nice if anyone that mattered, not that you guys don't matter, but I'm talking about like policymakers, right?
Mhm.
Somebody that has the actual ability to change things on the ground level. If they would just see that and be like, oh, wow, like, you know, when appraisers are appraising a house, white people are getting a whole extra house, you know, like maybe that's unfair. Maybe, you know, and then all the bullshit with the CRT. It's not, nobody's saying that white people are bad, white people are evil. I really don't. I mean, again, I understand like the whole thing, like, you know, the CRT is the new whatever came before it, but nobody's trying to demonize anybody. Again, it's just straight equality. All we're asking for is equality.
So do you think the whole Juneteenth holiday was kind of throwing a bone at you rather than allowing for any real kind of change?
There's no change.
That's what I mean. Is
Yeah.
in
And that's
lieu of any change, that, you know,
right.
it was something to throw to say, hey, we're doing something in the political arena, even though they've done something that really didn't help in any way.
It's a symbolic victory.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Derek Chauvin conviction did more for the Black community than the Juneteenth holiday. And again, while I'll take the Derek Chauvin conviction because it is right and just, there's a lot of questioning about whether or not that is real or significant change as well.
I mean, honestly, it just, to me, and like, I admit I'm a bit cynical, a bit jaded, you know. My partner, Michael, is a Black man, you know, Black and Indian. He's mixed, it doesn't matter. But the thing is it literally, you know, like, these things matter to me. And not only because, like, his father had faced discrimination when he came here from Guyana, you know, being dark-skinned and a foreigner. Like, he served the country, he fought in multiple wars in the army. Like, he every bit earned, you know, his citizenship more than a lot of people in this country that sit on their asses and do nothing, but were just born here, you know.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, to say that somebody that literally did the American dream, came from a country that had nothing, joined the military because they knew it would give them citizenship, and fight their way up to a comfortable middle class life, like, that is like the dream that they feed to everybody, but then they still shit on them even when they accomplish that. And it boggles my mind that, you know, like, with the whole Juneteenth thing, I was like, it's great, it's nice, but to me, it's, you know, the whole lipstick on a pig. It's doing something symbolic without any fundamental change. I mean, it's literally like Starbucks putting rainbow fucking cups out during Pride. Like,
Right.
Starbucks isn't egregious about being anti-gay, like, unlike, say, Chick-fil-A. But, like, if Chick-fil-A put out a Pride cup, then it would be, you know, the same. It's like, okay, like, what does this matter? What is this doing to actually help anybody?
Right.
Like, what is this doing to fix the socioeconomic injustices that are go back generations? I mean, you had, you know, fucking redlining that literally kept Black people from being able to partake in federal programs to help build generational wealth and get them out of, you know, those lower rungs up to, I mean, most white people in this country, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of them benefited from policies, you know, that deliberately disenfranchise others to help their families accrue wealth over generations. And there are plenty of poor white people too. So, like, it's not that all of them are.
Right.
But when you deliberately exclude an entire group of people from a government program meant to help lift people up from poverty and give them, you know, a fresh start, essentially, to help them grow and to help the country grow with them. Like I don't understand how you can, look at that and then come to today where like the effects of that are still being felt in these
Right.
communities and be like, well, we can't give them more because I mean they're not slaves anymore. They've got rights. They can vote. Like they're just Americans. If we give them anything more, then it's just a handout. It's like,
Hmm.
no, you need to level the playing field. It is literally like telling every fucking racial group to run a marathon. But,
Hmm.
before you let the people of color run, you're fucking taking their shoes, so they got no bootstraps to pull themselves up by, and then you're shooting them in the fucking kneecaps and telling them to run while they're starting half a mile behind everybody else. Like,
Yeah.
you are literally doing everything you can systemically to disadvantage these people, and then you point to, the fact that there are really bad neighborhoods, there are really bad problems in the inner cities, and it's like they have crap education systems because our education system is tied to property taxes, and if you don't have a good education, you have almost no prospect for moving up in this world. Full stop. And so if they can't provide for themselves one way, then poverty is the number one driver to crime. It has nothing to do with your skin color.
Right.
It has whether or not to do with you come from any kind of money or privilege, be that lower middle class or above. Like if you even just have a little bit, you're less likely to get involved in crime, and then that's a vicious cycle where you get kids for petty things in high school, get them in the system, and then you just keep fucking churning out this thing of moving them from juvie to like, and it escalates and it ruins
Yeah.
lives, it ruins families, and it keeps that community down. And like I can't help but see it as like the feature, not the bug,
Well, yeah.
and
I mean,
the punitive is
poverty.
nothing.
Right. Poverty is a gateway drug to most of society's ills. I mean, outside of rich people. But and it's they know what they're doing. Like you keep a group impoverished, they're going to do all the bad things, and then you get to cage them, work them for free, um, break them up. Just, I mean, it's yeah, poverty. It's the new slavery,
Well, I mean, technically slavery is still legal in this country if you're imprisoned. If you're
which is where a lot of
Most
our
people
black
of
men
color
are.
pretty much end
Yeah.
up. So,
Yeah.
based on the way the system is set up. So
Yeah.
that's
And they know what
that's
they're
their
doing.
loophole. That's their loophole
Yeah.
to be able to
100%.
extort these people for pennies, if not free. Like even California knows that like they'd be fucked if they didn't have their
Hmm.
volunteer firefighting force of prisoners that have no
Oh,
say in the matter.
yeah, no, I heard that they were trying to disband that. Either they did, or they're like there's a lot of outcry about that. It's bullshit, because you have these people who've been fighting fires, which I'm gonna say it's ridiculous, but I'm like, okay, we're gonna take like quote unquote the worst among us, and we'll put them on the front lines. Just like with the Civil War, where you had, most of the soldiers were black, so it's like, all right, well, we're gonna you go fight for us. And if you get burned up, like, nobody will care except, the people who fucking love you. But then they get out, they have this experience, and they can't go work for the fire department, with this with the skill set. It's
Because we treat felons like shit in this country. Even if
right.
you're fucking put away for a non-violent, victimless crime of possession of drugs or using drugs, which I don't believe should be a crime.
Yeah.
Like, you should not go to jail. I mean, there are people serving life imprisonment for
Hmm.
fucking marijuana, yet half
Yeah.
the country has at least medical marijuana, if not full-on legal recreational marijuana at this point. And nobody's like, some people are talking about it, but not enough are talking about, hey, maybe we shouldn't be locking these people up. Maybe we should let them go and expunge their records for nonviolent drug offenses, because those people don't deserve to be in prison. If they had an addiction, put them in treatment, but don't
Right.
lock them up and ruin their lives, branding them with felon, where they're not going to be able to get housing in some places. They're not going to be able to get jobs. I mean, you're essentially, the reason why we have such a high recidivism rate in this country is because we focus on being punitive and punishing people who do wrong, rather than trying to correct the issue and realize, hey, these people were stealing, but it's because they're in abject poverty and they're just trying to scrape by, or they're dealing drugs for the same reason. They don't have many economic opportunities because they came from a poor family in a shitty area, and they have a black sounding name, so they're not going to get hired for places. They went to a school that was underfunded, so they don't have the best education.
Their area is overpoliced.
And the area is overpoliced, so even something that, might not get someone else locked up, they get locked up for.
I mean, and let's be real, in larger cities, cops are hunting young Black men. But the real reason we have such a high recidivism rate is, well, one, racism, two, private prisons, which should be illegal.
Absolutely, they should be illegal.
Mm-hmm. When I used to be a conservative, I definitely never understood the issue of over-policing. If anything, I thought under-policing was the issue, that, if we just had more police, there would be less crime.
Well, that's what they tell you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I recall, when New York's police union got a bug up their ass because of something not going their way, they basically pulled back. They stopped writing tickets. They stopped over-policing for a little while. And guess what? All hell didn't break loose. In fact, things were a bit better.
Yeah, do you remember like when they stopped doing the stop and frisk, and they were shocked that crime kept going down. It's like, well, how are you going to keep all the Black people in line if you don't over-police them? Maybe we're just normal people that you treat us with dignity and respect. We do normal things, just like all other people.
It seems like it's still so ingrained in our society that a person of color counts less than a white person. I mean, I have a dear friend, and I have known him since I was in high school. Now, this kid, like, came from money. Like, his family, they were pretty loaded. Like, I mean, what other 16-year-old gets a brand new Mustang, to drive around in when they turn 16? And now he was doing, I believe, his doctorate at Yale. And I know he went to Yale, and I think he stayed on to finish his PhD. And like, the car he drives is worth more than anything I have ever owned or likely ever will own. We're talking six figures for this car. And he stopped into a CVS because he was working on something late night. He goes into a CVS. He's Black, by the way. He's got his backpack, and he's going to grab some snack food and some drinks. The fucking security guard followed him around the entire store. And it's like, dude, that guy's car is worth more than you make in a year, maybe 2 or 3, depending. And yet you're going, like, if I walked in the store, I wouldn't be followed around like that. And it actually physically hurts me that a friend of mine went through something like that, when I know that I would never be subjected to that. I don't get side-eyed by security when I walk into a place. And
that must be nice. No, yeah, I started only going out, like, anytime that I needed to do things in public, I would do it immediately after work. So I'd be in like my work, like, clothes. Because when I'm dressed professionally, people don't follow me around the same way they do if I'm in like jeans and a t-shirt. If I'm in jeans, I think
you're one of the good ones. You're one of the professional ones, which is
yeah.
Good.
I mean, well, she clearly has money, So I don't know, but because I mean, the places I've lived, it hasn't been. I mean, definitely. Well, okay, Baltimore is not predominantly white, but the area that I live in is, and then Illinois definitely is predominantly white. But there's enough Black people to where you understood there were those Black people, and I say that huge eye roll. And then sometimes there were the good ones, and yeah, depending on how you dressed was, people talk to me differently when, I'm dressed differently, and it's annoying.
I was really surprised that you said that you hadn't heard of Juneteenth until you were an adult, because although you didn't spend any particular amount of time on it, and I don't remember exactly what year it was, I do recall discussing it in high school when I was a kid, and that was
in Alabama?
No, in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in Wisconsin.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
That makes way more
Wisconsin was
sense.
Wisconsin was considered a really liberal state
Mhm.
at the time when I
Yes.
lived there, although it's become much more conservative now. But yeah,
Recently, yeah.
we didn't go into any detail, but we did talk about it, along with, our study of the Civil War.
We discussed
My
the
school skipped over it.
Emancipation Proclamation. That was about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was noted that it took some states a bit longer to release all the slaves. Like, it wasn't just, all right, you're free, get out. But like, nobody talked about, Juneteenth, or I don't know. It has a number of different names. Like, none of them, not even the date, nothing.
I mean, I was in my fucking mid-20s when I first learned of Rosewood and Black Wall Street and the atrocities committed there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people that didn't know about it until I think it was Watchmen came out. The show on, I think it was HBO that did it, where they actually showed it as it's happening. Obviously it's not the same as it was, because it is, a fictional portrayal of a historical event. But a lot of people, I remember their minds being blown, and then they actually look it up and they're like, holy shit, this really happened. I'm like, yeah, it really happened. And I mean, I don't even remember where I first heard of it. I just know I was in my mid-20s and it blew my fucking mind too. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Juneteenth, again, like Maya was saying, when I was in school, I went to high school in Florida. My parents moved down here. I know, right? My parents moved down here when I was a kid. So I went to high school in Florida, and I, learned there. And yeah, we learned about the Civil War. We learned about the Emancipation Proclamation and how not all the slaves were, freed right away, that it did take time, but that was it. They left it at that. There was no, on June 19th, the last of the slaves were free, and it is celebrated to this day as Freedom Day for, Black Americans. And it really, it still galls me, just how many gaps were in my education that I wasn't able to fill in until I was an adult.
Okay.
And that so many other people don't. I hang in liberal circles. I'm online. I'm talking to people. I'm actually interacting with more people than most. And so I learn about these things, and I learn, a lot more than I ever did in school. And it's just, we're doing a disservice to this country and to our
Mm-hmm.
children by not teaching these things. Hell, even Hamilton, the first hip hop musical to go amazingly big, is still technically whitewashing history. It's got an ethnic cast, but it is still glorifying the founding fathers and just erasing all of the problematic issues of them. I love the show. Don't get me wrong. It is amazing. Lin-Manuel Miranda is fucking brilliant. And I cried when I watched it. The scene with the mom and her kid, I fucking lost it. But it doesn't change the fact that it is still a very white, and it's a very white centric, conservative friendly retelling. And the first majority, or almost complete person of color cast for a show. They're talking about some of the whitest motherfuckers we've ever had in this country. And they again, it is glorified, and it is presented as these are all good, honest, upstanding people, and we should essentially deify them, when they were all flawed. Some were better than others. And I'm not gonna lie, the way they portrayed Jefferson did kind of make me chuckle a little, because fuck Jefferson. But it's problematic, but it's a start. It's a start at least. But we need to stop deifying.
Okay, I wanted to say hello to Cynthia. Thank you for being able to join us. I know you have had such a busy day today.
Yeah, because until somebody pay me reparations, I gotta work. So
Now, you guys had a great stream, I think Sunday, about Juneteenth.
Oh, on the nonprofit, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to watch it all because I was too busy in drive. Well, no, let me take that back. So I would like to tell you all how I commemorated mostly Juneteenth.
Okay.
So this past weekend, my partner and one of my very good friends, who is the president of our advocacy group in Chicago, were invited to speak at a rally in Atlanta, Georgia.
That's awesome.
And it was a great event. It was hot as fuck. We're 2 minutes in, right? So I can say fuck, right? Cool. It was hot as fuck. And I felt like I was about to die until we got like water. But I was like, okay, cool. So they actually were invited to speak on freedmen history and Juneteenth, and also why it's important to still push for policies to make Black Americans whole. So so we did that Friday, and then we had like and we rented an Airbnb, me and our friends, and then everybody basically who was at the rally, like literally ended up at our Airbnb. It was people that was walking in. I was like, "Who are you?" Okay, well, come on in. But we got a chance to really, meet people and talk to our, newfound friends. It felt like a family reunion. But one of the things that I really loved about it is that we all got a chance to really start to speak to one another. And also talk about what this means to us, as Black Americans, as even though like we have this policy, but to be honest, like Juneteenth in some shape, way, or form has been, recognized since 1866.
Yeah.
And then in the late 1970s is when Texas actually ratified it as a holiday. I believe like 1979, 1980. And then you had, domino effects of different municipalities and then states that actually recognized Juneteenth. I believe by the time, I want to say in 2018, 2019, about 47 states recognize Juneteenth in some shape, way, and form. And then I know that my job specifically ratified Juneteenth as a company holiday, and so we all got the day off.
Awesome.
Yeah, so unfortunately George Floyd died, and that's kind of why they say, you know what, I think that we should do something to kind of commemorate, to help out Black employees. So I'm gonna give them Juneteenth. Okay, let's do that. And I was like, but that's neither here nor there. Going back to my story. Now, and so one of the things that we kind of like settled on, myself and the others that, the organizers of the rally, is that we wanted to do something like this every year, because Juneteenth should not just be a day that, people get together and have a barbecue. Even though I don't necessarily have issues with people having cookouts and barbecues and having a good time, but at the same time, this was a day to remember those who did not know that they were emancipated until much later, after the rest of the Union announced the emancipations of slaves. And we are in a very interesting moment, I would say, in American history. Because even though we have a federally recognized holiday about Juneteenth, which I look at it as an acknowledgement of guilt, like, America, you're basically saying, yeah, you owned slaves and that was shitty. Yeah, you did. But you also have folks that is trying to come up with very ahistorical remnants of what American history is, with the, the fighting of critical race theory, and or coming up with some bastardized curriculum when it comes to how we teach, what American history really is. So, so if we actually really get into the question, like, how should we celebrate Juneteenth? Word to your mother, asexual atheist. How do we really celebrate Juneteenth? Another thing that happened over the weekend is I was also invited to moderate a virtual event hosted by my job through our employee-led team called the Black Affinity Network Group. And we invited a couple of speakers to speak on Juneteenth and history and things of that nature. And one of the speakers that I invited specifically to come because I knew that she was going to bring the funk made me damn near cry. And I was trying to hold it in so that I would not be crying on camera while this woman was talking, because she really brought home the atrocities that slaves actually endured, and really got through like the real reason why slavery was even thought of to be part of the reason why we should, um, uh, abolish it in the midst of the Civil War. It wasn't necessarily because, you know, Abraham Lincoln and the majority of Congress was really about getting rid of slavery. It was more so because the North was losing the war and they needed some fighting soldiers. So they said, hey, let's go ahead and free slaves and they can go ahead and join our ranks. And that's really what turned the tide of the war, starting with the 54, with the Massachusetts troops in the 54th Regiment. Check out Glory, great movie. I think Ferris Bueller was one of the generals that was in it. What was this? What's his real name? The guy who played Ferris Bueller?
Matthew Broderick.
Matthew Broderick. Yeah, he was in that movie as well. So anyway, so when she really started to bring home like the toil of these people, and now we want to make this a holiday. She said, celebrate what? And I was like, oh, that hit me home, because like everybody's like, yay, we got this holiday. But think about where we get this holiday from. It wasn't like something feel good that happened. This slavery was a horrible, horrible, horrible institution. And even though like you even have like textbooks that came out of South Carolina, Louisiana, Alabama, and some other southern states about how slaves were happy, that's exactly false.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally false. And one of the things that I'm really concerned about, especially with Juneteenth, is now that it's a federal holiday, is the whole notion of, hey kitty, bringing this commercialization to the holiday. If I promise you all, I might lose my breath if I see a Juneteenth mattress sale. I'm just letting you know right now.
Oh my God. You've been watching Black Twitter.
Stephen Colbert actually told that joke. He was
he got it from Black Twitter. No, they were talking about that before, like back when the Senate passed the bill.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, like watch out next year. You're going to see, 50% off couches and cars and
Facts.
Oh my God. I love Twitter though.
Yeah. Twitter is a blessing and a curse at the same time, is it not? So I take this as a time that this really needs to be a moment, a teachable moment, and really just get into like what it is that we are as America, how we got to be America, what really made America a country, a first world country, even though I know that first world is usually, it's not very.
We understand what you mean.
Yeah. But like, it became an economic superpower because of free labor.
Yeah.
Like cotton was king, along with tobacco and indigo and some other products. And we can point to so many different buildings, educational institutions in the capital of our United States of America, where these buildings were built by slaves.
Yeah. No appreciation, none. It's just like, you're not even people. Like, why do we let you have any rights at all? Just constantly fighting for equality. It is so crazy to me. Oh, I was going to say something and I lost it, but it was kind of what you're saying made me want to bring up the topic of what allyship looks like from the non-Black community.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know there's a lot of non-Black people here. And, you know, as we're talking, oh, yeah, I was a little upset because one of my bigger issues is like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, I understand it has to be June 19th, but now it's this holiday that comes after school's out. Most children may not even know that it's there. Is there any teaching? And what is it? It's nice to have a day off if in fact you get one. But when we're talking about celebrating it, you know, what I guess the question really is, what does allyship look like? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. Like, you know,
because we're not teaching kids. We're actually, a lot of states are moving to like, teachers are either going to be fined, imprisoned, definitely fired for mentioning anything close to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the egregious part, right?
Yeah.
That, you know, people can actually lose their livelihoods for telling the truth.
Right.
I mean, like, I don't, it's almost, it's, you know, I always wonder, ask myself, like, I just don't understand why people do these things, right? But at the same time, I completely understand it because they already did it over and over and over again. It's kind of like monkey see, monkey do. Like, you know, a habit is something that is hard to break. If you keep on doing the same thing and over again, you kind of should expect it. And this is, I mean, and these actions are really not new.
Mm-hmm.
They're not new.
No, they've never stopped. It just looks different.
Yeah, I mean, like, these institutions kind of just like, you know, overturn or reinvent themselves in some other shape, way, or form in some type of oppressive state. I mean, and it's constantly like you just mentioned, it's a fight. But, you know, I believe that part of it is also like not only just remembering what happened and just be committed to telling the truth, because, you know, when you say Juneteenth happened and this is a federal holiday, it is an admission of guilt, America. It is. It's an admission that this is what you did. I keep going back to it because I don't know what else to default to. I can't see how you can't spin history into something that was feel good for other than what it really is. I don't know. And I would even say, like, you know, I want to kind of just touch a little bit about what does allyship look like. And part of it, of allyship specifically, is also you who happen to not be Black to also be committed to telling the truth. You know, and recognizing, you know, what the truth is and making it your business to make sure that the truth is taught, not only just to children, but to teenagers and adults as well. This is our history.
Yeah.
This is definitely, you know, what America is. It's apropos to what America is. And I had a friend who was also speaking at the rally who personally said that I don't want an ally. I said, well, what do you want? He said, I want co-conspirators. I said, oh. I'm not mad at that.
I understand it, but, you know, I mean, any individual group of minorities is such a minority of the country. It's allyship is the better route.
Well, you know, I would say this, Maya. I think of back in 1988 when the Civil Rights Liberties, I think the Civil Liberties Act was signed into law by Ronald Reagan, which was the payment of $20,000 to Japanese internment victims during World War II. And or their direct descendants, if, you know, if the person who was interned is no longer living. And one of the main bodies of people that supported and really pushed the president and Congress and all, and different ones involved to make sure that that became a law was the Congressional Black Caucus.
Mhm.
Like they were actively involved in making sure the commission happened. And once they came up with what they wanted to do, that happened, So, even though like co-conspirator may be a bit, sounds like, a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Gosh, when I'm on a roll, I hate when I lose words, but it may seem like, a bit like, extreme.
Mhm.
It sounds like a bit extreme, but that's kind of what happened. I mean, like, these weren't people to say, yeah, that should happen. No, they made it happen. They were the
Yeah.
ones who were, really part of like, making sure that that legislation became a reality. And
Mhm.
that's when Representative John Conyers got the idea to come up with HR 40 and then introduced it in Congress a year later after the Civil Liberties Act was signed. But you didn't even have hey, you didn't even have like the CBC at the time even supporting a bill that would even like support them or the community that they supposedly represent. But that's like that's another stream. But however, but if we want to do allyship and if we want to really say like how can you stand in solidarity with the African American community on these things, it's to say that we help us fight these things too. You as the, I know that this is an atheist channel, but if we got like some secret Christians listening, you pick up your cross and walk.
Right.
Where's our Benjamins, right? You remember Benjamin? Come on, you former Christians, you know that story. Okay, well, if you don't know, I'll tell you.
You talking about Benjamin, the younger brother of Joseph?
Benjamin was the one, I forgot his full name, but Benjamin was the one when Jesus was on his way to the Mount Calvary and he stumbled. I think that the third time that he stumbled, they made
Simon of Cyrene.
Simon of Cyrene. My bad. see. It's been so long. I got my peoples mixed up. Simon of Cyrene. Thank you, Godless Granny. I appreciate it. See,
you're welcome.
I love story time with Cynthia. Like when she's on a roll, man, you just sit back and smile and nod, and it's just great.
Like, come on, little children. But Simon of Cyrene, yes, Granny knows her Bible. I know that's right. But that's the thing. But like, he helped pick up Jesus's cross and helped them walk it up the the Mount Golgotha to Calvary in order for him to get crucified. I mean, it's kind of fucked up what happened, but still, he helped him. He helped him to an end goal, and that's what allyship looks like to me. Like, it's other people who belong to other communities who recognize that America did a job on African Americans who built the country, and it's time for them to recognize this, redress this, and then commit closure. And that's what we really need.
When you first mentioned getting your Benjamins, I thought, what, $50 bills?
I think that's $100 bill, to be honest with you.
No, I just checked because I couldn't remember if it was 50 or 100 either, but yeah, it's 50s.
Your Benjamin Franklin's.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I saw either of those. So.
I know, right? In the digital world.
Right.
In the cryptocurrency of it all. But yeah, that's what allyship looks like to me. Like, if somebody really says that they're an ally, I'm like, okay, so you gonna help me with this fight? You gonna help me call some congressmen? You gonna write to them too and tell them these are specific policies. I mean, we still check this out. Alone, the George Floyd policing bill is still chilling in the Senate. Ain't even up for a vote, right? Yeah. The anti-lynching bill that Cory Booker and Kamala Harris introduced when Kamala was still a senator is still chilling in the Senate, has not come up for a vote. Those two alone I mean, and I mean, not even talking about HR 40. That
like,
just
yeah,
went
if they were trying to like throw us a bone, the anti-lynching one would have been.
That's a layup.
Yeah.
That's an easy layup.
Right.
The least that you can do.
You can't promise
it's more
to
than
not
a
lynch.
it's more than the symbolic victory of naming Juneteenth a national holiday, because to the
Right.
people it matters to, it already was. It didn't matter if it was recognized by the government or not.
Right.
The community that it is for celebrated it. They recognized it, and they didn't need authorization to do so.
But the problem is often is, I said is twice, but I'm sorry about that. The problem is so often African Americans, when it comes to policy, get symbolism. We really haven't seen any transformative policy per se since the 1960s. And even those were piecemeal, because there's still a racial wealth gap.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
there's still an income gap. There's still, you know, even African American housing ownership is lower than it was in the 60s.
Yeah.
You know,
One of the things that really gets me is the voting rights issues. My own Congressman Mo Brooks was one of the people pushing for some of the legislation, even here in Alabama, to reduce voting rights, and he was arguing, well, anyone who says that requiring an ID is a penalty to Black people is insulting Black people, because it's no harder for a Black person to get an ID than it is, a white person.
Oh my gosh. I was arguing with an asshole about that the other day. And he was like, why, I don't know why, you have to go into a bank and you have to, he's like, if you want to cash a check, or if you want to get on a plane, or, something else he was saying. And I'm like, yeah, the issue isn't that we don't want to show ID. It's that they're limiting, like, don't require us to do something that you're then making harder to get. Like, you're closing down MVAs, you're moving them out to where, we can't even, like, you have to take a bus to get to a bus to get to the bus.
That's right.
Building. You make it damn near impossible. And then you're just like, what? Like, it's right over there. Like, I mean, a lot of
right over
people
there
can't
for you.
a lot of people can't just get into their car.
Right.
Because again,
you got a car.
You've impoverished them. And so a car is a big expense. There's a lot that goes into a car that a lot of us have the luxury of taking for granted. But the poor, when you're still struggling just to, put food on the table, or to pay rent, there's so many people I know where they have to take a check plus part of another check to pay rent. And then you're talking to them about, like, oh, well, if you just go over there, well, first you have to go over there to get an ID that you don't necessarily need, because nobody in this community has an ID. So the people that are doing business in the area have made it exceedingly convenient for people without IDs to do business. A lot of them are very sharky, like check cashing places. And then I mean, there aren't a lot of banks. People figure it out. A lot of places, your work ID, it has your name and your face, and your work isn't going to give you a fake ID. A lot of places accept the work ID as your ID, and people just get by. And he was like, well, how do they get on a plane? And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I don't think we're talking about the same people. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have never left their side of town. They can point in the general direction of the airport, like they've never been in it. And these are the people we're talking about. And a lot of the things, like, I don't know, if you're here to be an ally and not a dick, or even if you're here, like, I don't know, there are a lot of conservative allies. A lot of people who are in red states and have only heard the Fox News talking points, and they understand that Black people are saying stuff and it means a lot, and they want to be supportive, but they just don't get it. I don't just grab don't just grab any random Black person, but there are enough of us willing to have the conversation where you can go to seek out the information. If you need to have a conversation, it's like, I hear what you're saying. I read this book. It's not clicking. I need help explaining it. And I hear a lot of people when you're like, I'm not, like, I hear about it, but I'm not into it. I can't explain it. So grabbing a random Black person is not the thing to do. But, if you're in a stream like this, you see me, you see Cynthia, you see, oh gosh, I feel so bad. I totally forgot her name. Who's the other nurse?
Oh, Jenna.
Thank
Yeah.
you. There are a lot of Black atheists in the community that are so willing to have the talk with you, whether it be on stream or Discord or what have you. I've done this a lot in the trans community. It wouldn't occur to me to walk up to a random trans person on the street and, tell me about the struggle. But when I see people on YouTube and, I befriend people and we're in Discord, I can have these conversations. What does this look like? Right. This is allyship, just understanding, being able to, caring enough to understand where I'm coming from is a big help. And, perhaps having the conversation. I think, Cynthia, the first conversation I had with you, I was talking about like I was cussing out my dad for making anti-Semitic comments. Mm-hmm. And, like one of my big points was like, you don't know your own book, because what you're saying it's not in the Bible, and it doesn't stand the test of logic. Like, and seriously, when I say I cussed him out, I'm not saying I told him off. Like I actually said, you're a fucking idiot.
Whoa.
Yeah, to my father. He gave me life. Anyways.
If I ever said that to my dad, I wouldn't be breathing the next day.
They get over it. I mean, because what are you going to do when you're in the wrong? Like you're really trying to convince me that there's just like a race of people that are trying to take over the world, and you can tell this because they're doing so well. And I'm like, if you, not every single Jew in the entire world is doing really well. One, if you can't see that, that's your own fault. Two, if you notice that a group of people is doing really well, one, why aren't you talking about the evangelical communities? Because they're the ones that are really trying to get over right now. But two,
talk about your preacher that keep on shaking your ass down for tithes and offering every fucking Sunday, and you ain't seeing the return. What about that? Continue.
It's just, there's a lot of communities. I see it a lot in the Asian community. I see it a lot in African communities. They band together. They do really well because that's what you do when you band together. We African Americans are Americans. We've been told a lie. We've been raised up with a lie. We've bought into the lie. It's a very dog eat dog, crab in a bucket kind of environment in a lot of our communities. And, we're not really shown how to deal with that. So, it's just, it's very much divide and conquer. And so when you see it, but you don't see it, it can look nefarious, but it's not. And if like, to just like, to not understand that, to not even try, just to kind of like listen to what a couple of idiots are saying on YouTube, it's insufficient, and I won't tolerate it, not even from my dad. And again, I'm not saying you have to cuss out your parents to be an ally, but to have the conversation, to say, like I was in a streamer's channel the other day, and they were making very right-wing comment. Again, the streamer was an ally, and they didn't get it. And a lot of people were like, no, we understand you're not a racist, but you're saying racist shit. We need you to hear us when we say it's not like this, it's like this. And again, sometimes it's just that conversation where it makes somebody stop and think, okay, maybe I need to rethink it. That can be allyship, like where you're well-versed enough to stop somebody and say, hey, you're not well-versed enough. You need to read. And there's a lot of people that I follow on YouTube that were like, oh, I thought, like, even with the Southern strategy, They grew up in the South, and they were told to love and praise the South, and they were like, yeah, I love the South, I'm gonna go learn more about this. But literally no historian buys into this, to the Southern strategy. And so now they have these YouTube videos where they're like, guys, yeah, no.
I mean, but even think about it, Maya, who even knows what the Southern strategy really is? I mean, like this, I'm like, all this type of stuff is like, things that kind of has been like, hidden in plain sight, right?
Yeah.
And I was even talking with my partner, because like, specifically when we're talking about like this dog eat dog, that portion specifically that like seems to be very prevalent in our community. And the thing about it is that I sometimes think, or observe rather, that the worst of what America is, especially like what we glorify, starts to even like, creep up even more so, and even more in your face when you're looking at the African American community, because the African American community is definitely a reflection of what America is. And when I say that, I mean this. Like, one of the things like critical race theory oftentimes talks about, and we're going to actually talk about that on the nonprofits this Sunday at 3 p.m. Make sure you check it out. But one of the things that critical race theory talks about specifically is about race being a social construct. And one of the things that I kind of want you all to imagine is this, because this is telling. Every slave insurrection that happened on American soil, if it was thwarted, most likely was thwarted by another enslaved person. And have any of you all heard of the term meritorious manumission?
No.
So loosely, what meritorious manumission is basically kind of empowering some of your slaves to be kind of spies on other ones, so they can kind of tell on, the other slaves if they're trying to, to escape, to take over, et cetera, or even if they're not doing their work properly. And one of the really egregious portions of slavery was that a lot of slave owners would damn near starve their slaves to death. And some of them would be rewarded if they told on other slaves for, doing whatever. And oftentimes they were rewarded by a hot butter biscuit.
Yeah.
Stockholm syndrome before Stockholm syndrome was a thing.
Right. So this is and one of the things, if we kind of fast forward now, and especially if you look at like your Candace Owens or your Jesse Lee Petersons, they found a niche in white supremacy specifically to kind of insert themselves in that way, in order for them to, basically shit on their own people, but they are rewarded in some shape, way, or form with the platform, with money, with this, that, and the other, because
they make a lot of money.
They make a whole
an egregious amount of money.
A fucked up amount of terms of money.
Enough money to not need to work ever again and just shut the shit down.
But see, that's the thing. Like, one of the things that we have learned specifically in America, and I'm pretty sure it shows up in different places around the world, because white supremacy isn't just an institution here, right?
No.
Is that if you find yourself to be able to kind of insert yourself in some shape or way in this hierarchy, you are rewarded. I remember, I want to say sometime last year, when In Black and White was still on streaming, they did a story about this this lady who was in this the city of township of Evanston. Maya, you're familiar with Evanston.
Oh yeah.
And she specifically recorded a group of people who had a flag, a Confederate flag, on a public beach tied to the fence where they were sitting. And she was like, "Wait a minute, is that a Confederate in the North? Wait, what? Hold on." So she went ahead and she came back and she started to record, and she said, "I want you all to see this. This is in the city I live in, that you are actually having a group of people just, chilling with the Confederate flag right here in what's supposedly a very diverse area." And for the most part, Evanston is. I mean, it's still kind of
No, it
segregated when it
is.
comes to income.
I'm kind of
But
surprised to hear that. Like normally you'll see Confederate, in the North at least, you'll see
Mhm.
Confederate flags on people's property. Like
right,
they don't
no,
take them
this is
out in
on.
public.
No, this
Yeah,
is a beach, right? Matter of
right.
fact, one of the dudes to put it up had Confederate shorts on. That's how diehard he was.
Oh,
I was like,
goodness.
oh yeah. It gets better though. But here's the thing. So when she started to record and she did a live on Facebook of what she was actually seeing, you know who was defending the man for being able to have a Confederate flag on a public beach in front of everybody to see?
Jesse Lee Peterson.
No. It was another man of color. I think that he may have been either like Middle Eastern or may have been Indian.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was defending this white man's right to actually have a Confederate flag up. And then she said, "Do you understand when I look at that flag, what that means to me as a Black woman in America? Do you understand what that means to me?" It's the same thing about how a Jewish person will look at a
A
swastika.
Nazi flag. Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
right. How they would get triggered, and they should, and they would tell people to put that down because of the Holocaust, because never forget.
Mhm.
You know, why are you defending this person talking about freedom of speech? And to be honest with you, the Confederacy was a treasonous organization.
It
Oh,
really
yeah.
was. I don't understand why it's legal. I mean,
Mhm.
and again, I'm so pro freedom of speech. Like I really am. But like the country that tried to overthrow the country, we shouldn't be allowed to wait. I don't understand how it's legal
We
to wave
shouldn't
the
have
flag.
military bases named after Confederate fucking generals. Like,
No,
Mhm.
the Confederate
I
flag is
know.
literally the participation trophy for the treasonous losers in the South.
Right. I
yeah,
mean,
they are.
it'd be like naming something after like
Benedict Arnold.
any of the men that bombed the Twin Towers, any of the kamikaze pilots. Like
Mhm.
it's the exact same thing, and we just wouldn't dare. But
No. But the part that I really want you all to kind of focus on a little bit is who was defending him. And
Mhm.
she kept on saying it like, "I don't understand how you, a person of color, is defending this person. I can't get that." And then when I said in the chat, I said, "I do."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I said, "This is how those who want to inject themselves in some shape, way, or form in the hierarchy of white supremacy, that's how they respond to things."
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, white is right, Black is whack. And it's always been something that has been, codified in our institutions and in our systems for centuries.
Mhm.
Now, yeah, even during slavery, you had almost every other group owned a slave.
Sure.
It was a status symbol.
Yeah.
Hating Black people has always been like, I don't know, the thing to do.
Yeah, I found out, and this was like really tripping me out. I want to say like there were approximately 20,000 slaves in the United States over the when chattel slavery was an institution that were owned by other Black people. Now, some of them, not all, but
Mhm.
some of them uh, who were freed may have purchased their own freedom or what have you, may
Mhm.
have purchased the freedom of family members so that
Mhm.
they can, lead the institution as well.
No,
So
yeah,
Paul
that definitely happened.
Hillsdale was that. But, to your point, Maya, other groups of people like the five civilized tribes, a good chunk of
Mhm.
a lot of their population were African American slaves. You
Yeah.
know, I remember even looking at photographs from the 1800s of some some indigenous people nation chieftains that actually had on very westernized clothing. Hair was cut. Even some of them actually denounced their particular religion of, and then took on Christianity. And then part of like that portion was owning slaves. And let's also keep this in mind too. Where did they purchase the slaves? Who did they purchase the slaves from? Right? So, we still have this, and it's so multi-layered,
Yeah.
but it's so fucked up. This whole notion of how, white supremacy actually like shows up even in our community, even to the point where it reflects in our behavior towards one another. Like, and you would even still see inceptions of meritorious manumission happening, in some shape, way, or form. So it's something to keep in mind when it comes to even how, like, when we're even thinking about crabs in the bucket. I'm like, well, this is nothing but another inception of meritorious manumission, because we're still dealing with the system of racism, white supremacy that's codified in our system. So it's definitely, yeah, it's deep, man. I'm just saying.
It is. And again, it is ingrained in us. And I think about so many of the Black people who, like my parents moved to Arizona, and my mom was like, you can only tell the Black people who are born and raised here, because it's almost just like a self-defeatist type attitude where, well, I'm Black, so I'm not going to be better, gosh, I can tell you so many stories that come out of there. It's them moving out there before Trump took office really opened my eyes to how prevalent racism was in the country still. Because I'm thinking, it's a new century. People know that people are people, right? I mean, I can understand if you're only shown things on TV, right? And you would think, there's a lot of white people in this country that have never seen a Black person.
Right.
And so if all you get is like, what you see on like, what do you call it? NYPD Blue or whatever the hell's on now. I don't watch much TV. But in the 80s, we were always drug dealers. We were always, in jail. We were always, single moms. We were always in the ghetto. We were always, trying to make it come up. Like, that's what you saw.
Right.
And there's a lot of racism against Black Americans in other countries, because that's what we ship out to them. And so that's what they get to see. We have a lot of immigrants fighting their parents. First generation Americans fighting their immigrant parents. Like, why are you around Black people? Like, they're bad people. Like, there's just something like in the Black gene that makes them bad.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's scientific. Continue.
Yeah. And it's not, and it's socialized, and we get it within our own community too.
Yeah.
And we need to get this, like, we need to start with education, re-education. And I know that's going to be an uphill battle, because they don't want us educated. But I mean, I don't know what that looks like on a grassroots level, but it's not going to get better until we're actually seen as people. And whatever the strides are moving forward, like I really wish if we could get it on TV or whatever, like changing the narrative. What is a Black person? I'm sorry, hold up. That could be a mom.
Oh, understandable. Yeah, I mean, like, education is definitely a big component of it, and it has to be to the point where when we're telling the truth. I mean, I cannot stress that enough. I just don't. I don't completely wrap my head around why we as a nation want to be so ahistorical, and I suppose I do, because, like, if we really tell the truth about what happened in America, how America became what it really is, and all the different things that has happened to marginalized communities to make America great, it would actually show that maybe we are not as great as we like to purport ourselves to be, right? No, we're not. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though, like, I personally do not see myself moving to another country. However, sometimes when I have to fight my health insurance, I think about Canada a lot, but that's neither here nor there. I know personally, I don't see myself going somewhere else. I mean, I have a life here, I have family here. And when
Right.
I see myself as an American, right? I
Mhm.
see myself as a United States citizen, point blank, period.
Mhm.
And it never should be. And also I usually have like a lot of sometimes back and forth with, like, some I like to call them like wokes online, that come up with, oh, we need to leave America, we need to annex ourselves, we need to take over the country. I was like, child, stop that mess. Stop. And I was like, to be honest with you, African Americans has a 400 plus year investment right here in the United States. And if you say, where are we going to go? If you say we need to leave America, where are we going to go? Where? I don't, where, you know, and I love it. Like, sometimes, like, if you hear like a racist, that's like overtly racist, and they say go back to Africa, I'm like, which country? Africa got 54
Right.
countries, about
Mhm.
3,000 different tribes. They speak over 2,000 different languages, dialects, and it's highly colonized. They just trying to get it together themselves. So where am I going to go, sir? Where?
But I mean, like, we don't even know, right? Because that was stripped from us.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, like,
I
exactly.
can talk to my husband. He'll tell you, yeah, oh, I'm
Mhm.
Scotch Irish. Me, I'm Mississippi. Like, that's
Right.
where
What Beyonce say? My mama Louisiana, my daddy Alabama.
right, right.
So you got to put us together, and I'm a Texas. Anyway, and I mean, like,
Yeah, and that's what we
I.
are. Like, where we hail from was the state that we were, our ancestors, or say ancestors, our grandmother's grandmother was
Correct.
enslaved in.
That was for me, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia. I actually trace, like, my eldest relative on my father's side to Virginia.
Mm.
And it's kind of funny, like, I think that's like my fifth great grandparents. She was born in 1840. He was born in 1800. So it's like a 40-year difference. I would love to see
Wow.
what those conversations were like, but
Right.
yeah, I was like, whoa, when did you marry her, sir? But but yeah, that's what happened. And I thought it was kind of telling because, like, I found that in the census, when I was looking up my family tree one afternoon on a Sunday in 30 minutes. It was quite fascinating. That's when I even found out, like, that my great grandfather on my dad's side was a World War I veteran. I didn't even know, you know?
Wow.
And so, like, and if I think about, if I come from two generations of veterans, right? If I think about, I come from chattel slavery, that, where you had a whole group of people that was very much so part of building the infrastructure that is what we know as the United States. We are invested in here. It's just the only thing. And when we talk about policies to make us whole, that's the least that America can do.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in
The
your
very
thoughts on
least.
this comment.
Mhm.
We should have the mind of children when it comes to race. Children don't recognize color. Racism is taught.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
yes and no.
Mhm.
I don't like the don't see race conversations. We're not there yet.
Mhm.
And when I hear people talking about not seeing race, I mean, and not just race, a number of factors. It leads to more bigoted behavior. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's more important to, again, I'm a diversity and inclusion trainer, so I value diversity. I
Mhm.
love that there are, that my friends are on every continent and every different color. And there's just so many wealth of experiences. And when you talk about diversity and inclusion, it's not just so much the diversity, because, I said this on a different stream where, you can have a white woman, a black woman, an Asian woman, all, and if they all, were brought up like upper middle class and they're all Christian and, they all went to similar schools and have a similar background, you have the same woman up there. The part about diversity is, it's diversity of thought and diversity, like the experiences, the background, what makes you you, how, and, in Congress, representation, bringing those different experiences to the table and saying, hey, I understand that you're a rich white guy, but sometimes people aren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and it takes more to get where you are. And this is what people who look like me and come from where I come from need to get to where you're talking about. Because you're bad, because this is a great law, but you're bypassing a lot of stuff and not seeing. I mean, and again, it's not bad to be rich. It's not bad to be white. It's not, bad to be male at all. But you have blinders. There are things that you can't see. And the beautiful part about diversity is when you collaborate, when you allow for the inclusion, you're bringing all these wealth of experiences that this other person has into your world. You're learning more. You're growing as an individual, and you can truly help make the world a better place, because now you have the resources you need to see the things that you didn't know. And when we talk about, well, I don't see race, it's like, well, you should, because these, you should be having the conversations. You should be asking the questions. I mean, I could say, well, a trans woman is just a woman. And so I need to understand what she's gone through to be who she is right now. That fight is really, really important. And that fight really has what I'm seeing, who she is to me today, like getting through that fight, that struggle is a huge part of that. And to say, well, all trans women are women to me, so I'm just going to treat her like a woman. Like it feels like I'm leaving out a lot. If she doesn't want to talk about it, that's one thing. But for me to just not see it seems, I'm hurting myself in that aspect.
I agree with you. I think we need to address the issues of racism, and I think racism is something that is taught rather than, inbred. But on the other hand, race incorporates culture. And when we ignore race, we ignore culture. And not all people of color are of the same culture. There are African people, there's Jamaican people, there's South American people, there's Indian people, there's Asian. I'm sorry, I don't even want to say Asian, because that is another group that incorporates so many different cultures.
Sure.
And to say I don't see race is to say I don't see culture. To me,
well, I like to take a stab at that a minute, because I think that one of the things that we should understand specifically when it comes to race and culture is that they're not really the same thing. No. Race itself is a social construct, right? But cultures and ethnicities are very much so the way that, based on the group that you're part of, the environment that you were brought up in, oftentimes like it can very much so be adjacent to the nationality that you are, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, because Black Americans themselves have a culture that's different from, persons who come from the continent of Africa, right? You have even like, Jamaicans who maybe have a different culture, cultural norms that like maybe from a person that's from Guyana, et cetera, right? So, we still have like these different portions of us that makes us a global community. But, when it comes to racism itself, yes, racism is taught, and you're right. But I think that another thing that we have to also understand specifically about racism is that we're not just working on racism definition 1.0 any longer, right? We're dealing with also how racism has bled into institutions, right? It actually rules how we do business, how we teach, how we hire, how we basically do anything and everything that matters in America. Racism is always the component of that. So, and then I would definitely say if we want to start dismantling these systems, it does have to start, individually, and then individuals have to come together to commit to making the systems on a macro level go away. And even though, like, especially since like racism is so codified in the American fabric, we know it's going to take time. Like, buildings don't come down just like that. Like sometimes you have to actually come up with like plans to even take something down, and then even come up with another plan to put something in its place. So it definitely takes like it takes a commitment on a macro level in order for this thing to actually become a reality. But you also have to want to do the committed work. Right? It has to be to the point where we understand that racism actually hurts all of us, because like it doesn't really allow us to appreciate, like you said, Maya, the differences that we all have. I loved when I was growing up when my mom would take me to different cultural events in Chicago that was different from our own, because I get a chance to meet new people. I get a chance to try new foods, and y'all know I love to eat. I get a chance to learn things that I didn't know before.
Yeah.
And then in turn, like we have an exchange and they can learn from me, like, what is their culture? Well, let me tell you, So, and this is and I kind of wish that we had that mindset as a people, but we don't, because we're just so married to, I'm just so me and this, that, and the third. But, but we have to also understand that we are, we're not just like an enclave to ourselves. We're really not. And I think that if we can kind of get in our heads that, it's okay to be part of a global community where we celebrate each other's differences, I think that that's going to be part, not the whole kid and caboodle, but it's definitely going to be a part of us really actually starting to do the work that really to bring down these systems that are very oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been going for 90 minutes now, so I think we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up. I think what we really got out of this is the number one thing that we need to do as a Juneteenth celebration is to listen and to learn our own history. Let the celebrations be a focus on what we did wrong in history and what we can do to try to bring right to our communities.
Yeah, and again, Black people aren't trying to punish white people. It's a narrative propagated by politicians so that they and their rich buddies can stay rich. A lot of us, like a whole lot of us, just want to be left alone. And you talk to a lot of people, they're just like, leave me alone. I just want to do my thing. I want to allow my kid to go outside and play and not worry if he's going to get shot.
Right.
But for
one thing.
Yeah, for one thing. But
yeah.
I mean, for a lot of us, it's just know the history. Slavery, something I have both said, we're American. The history of America is our history too. There are a lot of things I'm ashamed of. I'm ashamed of how America treated Japanese Americans, Native Americans, women. I don't have to be a victim to understand that, well, every country, right? But like the atrocities have been committed. I think it's important to understand and to learn, understand, and to do your best to support the support systems that need to be in place so that we can all move forward as a collective together.
And I would just say that with Juneteenth, the way that we should really remember it is, again, like piggyback on Dallas, Granny, and Maya, that yes, we should not be ahistorical. we definitely should acknowledge what made America America, and it is slavery. And we should do the proper things to actually fix the first citizens, which is us. Well, I will definitely say this, and it's not to slight anybody else, but like even when I was on other streams and I talk about first citizenship, it's never to downplay any other group of people. I don't do that. I'm a daughter of an immigrant. Okay. But we have to recognize that what we know now as citizenship and how we define citizenship in America now is because of the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment came about after the abolishment or the emancipation of slaves.
Mhm.
So when I say first citizens, I mean exactly that. What we know about citizenship is because of that, right? So, and there's certain things that citizens should expect from their government that African Americans have not gotten. I wanted to give this little brief nugget, and I want you all to really like let it sit with you for a second. There was I talk about this act a lot because it's so telling. The Homestead Act of 1862, where millions of acres of land was damn near given away for free to whites at the time, and even white immigrants at the time. And this particular policy lasted for almost 150 years. But at large part, this particular policy was something that African Americans could not take advantage of. I just learned this today, that with the particular act, not only were they given free land, damn near free land, they also got county agents so they can learn to mechanize the land to make money off of it.
Oh, I did not know
And
that.
yes, and that not only that, Dr. King talks about this, they were given land grants to build colleges to educate people. Okay, there's a lot of universities going towards the West that actually became a thing because of the Homestead Act of 1862. And you have approximately 43 to 48 million white Americans that are living off of the wealth of that one policy to this day. Just one. But African Americans, about 13% of the population. We're like, especially like those who come from chattel slavery, is only like about 35 million. And just opposed to even like 25% of white families are worth over $1 million, as opposed to African American families, only 4% of them are worth over $1 million. So and I can go on and on, but I understand that we're wrapping up.
No, we even saw something similar. We saw something similar happen after World War I. With
exactly.
the FHA.
With the GI Bill. My father couldn't. My father
Nope.
fought in Korea, and he couldn't get the
Could
GI
not.
bill. I mean, like, so, like, there's, but I'm just one policy, yo. So I mean, these and they got it.
Shuffled Black people into projects.
Mhm.
While the white people got damn near free houses in the suburbs.
Correct. And this is the type
We're
of
wrapping
stuff.
up.
Yeah, we're wrapping, because I know we're not about to go for another hour. But I'm just saying, like, I mean, these are the different things that that we're talking about. When I'm saying redress and repair, I'm talking about the same stuff that the federal government, made a thing in order to actually create a wealth class of people, is because they were citizens and they had a social contract with them to do so, is the same thing that we are saying to this day that the government owes its first citizens. Happy Juneteenth, everybody.
Kitty.
We're not asking for a handout.
No.
We're asking for equality. We want the same thing that you believe a full citizen should get.
Equity.
Thank you.
Equity. Like that's the main word for it. And not only equity, but also, like, for me, my son will know about when he gets a little bit older. He's only 7. I'm not going to tell him about the atrocities that happen just yet. But my son will be raised to know about these things, and educating people in my community that don't necessarily know about them, and advocating for policies that would help to uplift a marginalized group. I mean, it could be any number of things. HR 40, as Cynthia was talking about, also, education.
Once it's fixed, by the way, continue.
Also, education reform, expanding the post office so that it can do simple banking to allow, underserved communities, because every community has a post office, and they might not have a DMV. They might not have a bank they can afford, because you end up paying to be poor. If you don't have so much money or enough direct deposited, you have to pay to have a bank account. The post office could easily be expanded to do simple checking and savings accounts to serve these communities, and even allow them to get driver's licenses there, or state issued IDs, things to help, because they would not necessarily be able to otherwise. Anything we can do to help uplift and even the playing field, and
They really
education.
could just put the MVAs back where they found them.
That too. I'm just tossing out ideas, but it literally comes down to just, educating and talking about these things, like advocating for anything that can help to even the playing field. And I've been doing that for a while. I will continue to do it. Like, my partner still gets side-eyed by security when we go to a fucking Walmart, and it irritates the shit out of me every damn time. And I want to live in a world where, not that people don't see color, because no matter what, like, color exists. Like, even if you just see it as a descriptive adjective, like hair color and eye color, it's still something that exists. And, different colors of people have different histories attached to them. And we can, as you were saying, appreciate those and validate those by telling the truth about them, warts and all. And get to a point where it doesn't matter. Like, if you have a black sounding name, if you have the same qualifications, you're just as likely as Joe Smith to get the call back for that job, or that your house is going to be just as valued with a black family in it than, a white family in it. Like, evening the playing field, like equality, like egalitarianism, like that's the goal. And like, I'm doing my small part for it, and I would hope that everybody else would do theirs too.
Well said, Kitty.
Can I recommend one book and I'll shut up? I promise you I'll shut up.
I love book recommendations.
Sure. What's your recommendation?
Everyone pick up a copy of From Here to Equality, written by Kirsten A. Mullins and William Sandy Darity. Okay. Please, From Here to Equality. It's on Amazon. It's a very good book. It talks about, it makes the case for why reparations is necessary, but it's not just, hey, just give them a check and run away. It actually goes through the history of, of slavery, of Jim Crow, of mass incarceration, redlining, convict leasing, all these different things. Like, it's very, like I said, it's a very well-researched book, and I highly recommend everyone to read it. From Here to Equality by Kirsten A. Mullins and Dr. William Sandy Darity of Duke University.
Add that to my library. So many good books out there. Oh my God.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kitty and Maya and Cynthia, and thank you to everyone in the chat for the comments. They have been helpful as well, and they've really added to the conversation. And I hope that next year, when Juneteenth comes about, we can put some of these into practice, and hopefully we'll be seeing a country. I don't expect to see, huge monumental change in 1 year, but at least maybe things we can get a little bit better.
Like the Voting Rights Act,
that would be awesome.
Bring that up.
That would be helpful.
Let's do that.
Yeah. An anti-lynching bill.
And the anti-lynching bill.
Exactly.
And the George
There's
Floyd
3
bill.
right now that could be done that would do more for the country as a whole, not just the Black community, than making Juneteenth a national holiday.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like with the George Floyd charges, like waited with bated breath. Like any one of them would be great. You know?
That part.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate all of you. And if you are not already subscribed to these lovely ladies, Kitty's YouTube channel is linked in the description, and Cynthia's link tree is in the description. And if you want to have further conversation with Maya's Twitter handle is in the description as well. So if you want to get a hold of anyone for further conversation, just look at the description of the video and you should be able to find a way to contact us. And thank you for coming. Bye.
Bye.